Thank you to the worship team. Give them a hand for serving this morning. Yeah. Yes. I may have a little bit of a voice left. Listen, when it comes on, you just got to go with it, right? That's right. That's right. All right, so here we go. We're going to be quick. You're going to have to listen fast because we're going to get right in. Here's the big picture of what we're doing. We've got a series going on called History. So each week we're going to share stories, and we've got people's stories that we're going to share. Because the reality of life is that everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. You got one. Whether you like your story, don't like your story, presently happy about your story, or sad about where you are with your story, you still have a story. And it's no one else's to tell but you. Your story. That's why it's called Your Story. And the reality of the Christian life is, listen, the gospel of Jesus Christ isn't like an anti-narrative. It's not like another story going on. It is the story. His story is the story. I have a story, but if it only ends in my story, it ends in death. It ends in separation. When my story gets enveloped with his story, we make history. Amen? That's right. You have a story too. And when you submit your life and your story to his story, you get to make history with Jesus. You're not just here to occupy space. You actually have a purpose. You actually have a plan. There is actually a plan. When there was a plan of salvation, it wasn't just to pull you out and say, okay, here you go, now you're saved. Just ride this thing out till the end comes. Not the goal. We're a part of a bigger, broader story. I shared a little clip on Friday because it was Good Friday, and I think the challenge is just like Good Friday. If you're looking at Christianity from the outside, you'd say, why is this story good? Like, why is this day that Jesus died, why are we calling this a good story? Well, you would only call it that if you only had one piece of the whole story. If you just pulled out one separate chapter to the whole book. If you just read a couple of lines and thought, well, that's it. How could that be good? Well, you got to read in context of the whole story. He wins, right? He doesn't just die. I was so moved like reading the story. I've told you guys this before, but you read those sometimes familiar stories, and I have to stop, and when I'm reading the Word, I have to say, God, can you just show me what you want to show me that's new about this story that I haven't seen? Because the reality is the gospel of Jesus only grows and it only gets bigger. So the more you look into it, it's simple enough that a child can understand it, and it's complex enough that scholars could study it for years and years and years and never get to the end of it. Because that's how amazing the good news of Jesus is. So I'm reading it, and I have to stop. It's like reading the Christmas story or reading any other story. I say, God, can you just show me? And I was just shocked by, as I read through the story, like from Friday basically till Sunday when Jesus was raised, the actual earth was feeling the effect of this man named Jesus. The whole earth. So when we sing the song, the ground began to shake. And when the stone was rolled away, do you know, like the whole earth was shaking when the resurrection power of Jesus begins to reverberate and it begins to come out and it begins to fill the earth. Can you imagine? What are you posting like? Geez, did you feel that was like a 3.2 on the Richter scale? Or what are people posting at that point? Like, was that just something I ate? Or did anybody else feel that? Or, a couple days ago on Friday when the whole earth was dark, was that just... Now, what was that? Archaeologist or meteorologist? Well, how are they describing that one like? Archaeologist. That would be strange. Meteorologist, how about that? Listen, that's why the whole earth groans to see you wake up and become a son and a daughter. The whole earth itself is looking at this thing going, holy cow, it recognizes when the power of God becomes present. That's the truth. Whole cities get changed and filled with something new whenever Jesus showed up, didn't they? Like you would see stories and it would say the city was full of joy. Well, why was it full of joy at those times? Because someone's life got changed. So the story when the whole city was full of joy came from one lady's story that was at a well that came in contact with Jesus. Another whole village was changed because Jesus met this man who was just fully demonized, fully possessed by the devil. His story changed an entire city as he shared his story. Listen, this is the day to begin just to share your story. Share your story. Listen, there's no shame in your past when it belongs to Jesus. There is no shame attached to your past. So some of us struggle with this when we're talking about sharing our story. We think, well, yeah, I really would like to hide what I did over here. If I could go back and delete from my profile all of the pictures of all that happened with my life over here, I would go delete them. And God in his goodness and in his mercy says this. He says, look, I put this treasure in an earthly vessel. I put it in one made of clay, not one that's just super fancy and really sharp with magnificent colors. No, I want the one that's got cracks in it that people can see through, and they can see the stain, they can see the problem, they can see the brokenness in it. Because when the glory of God begins to redeem and restore, it becomes glory to God. Your story becomes the glory of God. Right? Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, right? We all have been there, but what happens when you meet Jesus? All of that, when you fell short of the glory, changes. And guess what? Now the glory, the weight, the presence of God on your life where you can share, that's where I was, but this is who I am. And this is what he's doing. That is the big story. That is the big story. You have creation. You can flash the, I think we've got a slide for it. The big story of God is just this. There was creation, there was the fall, there's redemption in Jesus, and there's restoration. Everybody, listen, everyone is somewhere on this pendulum in your own life. You were created. If you're away from God, you've experienced the fall. You've experienced it. You know what it feels like right now to be away from God if you don't know him. It's painful. It's full of darkness. It's just full of hurt. It's full of loss. You don't feel like there's a purpose. That's what it feels like when you're in that fall. But then when you meet Jesus, you find redemption. You find someone that purchased your life, who paid for all of you. The glorious gospel of Jesus. I paid for you, not just for you. He died as you so that you could become in him. And then there's restoration. And you see Jesus begin to restore, but you also know that at the end of the day, wherever I am in my story, we haven't experienced the full restoration yet. There's still more coming. No matter how much you've experienced, there's still more coming. And at the end of the day, it will all be fulfilled, and the restoration will be complete. There will be a new city. There'll be a new Jerusalem that comes. There'll be a new, no more tears, no more pain. Like that is what it looks like when full restoration happens over here. But we're in such a state now that we're so immediate with everything that wherever we are in this pendulum of story, we forget. We somehow manage to forget the story from my past of what God did. And we forget all that he's done. And I begin to experience some struggles. I begin to experience some pain. I begin to experience, where is God like in this? And I forget that I'm still in this story. I'm still in this story. So you got to grab onto both ends in this in life. Like you can't say, okay, well, it's all restored, because it's not. There's going to be full restoration. I haven't experienced all of it yet. None of us have. But I also know I'm not over here where I was after I was created. And when I experienced the fall, I know I'm not over here. So stop and take just a breath for a minute and understand there's a bigger story going on. There's just a bigger story going on. And Christians, guess what? We're not the parallel story over here. Like we are in the very heart of God's plan. We're in the very heart of it. That's why he said, now I'm going to give this to you. Now you go make disciples. You go. And as we go, we want to tell our story. So at the end of the day, when we go back, like you feel sometimes I can't share that. Like I know what I did. I know how painful that is. But we got to reconcile something together, because we're called ministers of reconciliation, right? We got to reconcile something together that God is able to. In Romans 8:28, he's able to work all things together for good, for those who love him, who are called according to his purposes, right? So whatever this was in my life, God is still absolutely able. God is able. The story of the gospel is not, again, it's not another story outside of what's going on in life. It is the story. Like that story brings hope. And when you're able to share where you were here, what happens? It releases hope, because the good news is full of hope. It says, as you share your testimony, Revelation says this: the testimony of Jesus Christ is the spirit of prophecy. That's what Scripture says. So the minute you share the testimony, the minute you share the account of your life, of what Jesus did for your life, That's your testimony, right? Something happens to you, you get called into court, and you have to share. You're just sharing the account. I don't know about all that. I'm just telling you, this is what I saw. This is how it happened for me. That is your testimony. Your testimony of Jesus is your testimony. And whenever you share that testimony, it just opens the door for God to do it again. Do it again. And then do it again, God. This has been my prayer lately. Do it again, like waves. Like, do it again, God. Do it again. Like, do it again. Who doesn't love to hear somebody's story of getting redeemed by Jesus? I find myself every time I hear them. Every time I hear some stories, there's that point that they come to, that they experience this, all the depravity, all of the pain, all the darkness of all this when you're separated from God in this fall, and then they find redemption. And they find this good news story, because everyone's story weaves and everyone has a door, because Jesus says, I am that place. Like, no one enters the Father but by me. Everyone's story, different directions, different ways you got there. Some circled over here for a long time. Some went straight opposite and then started coming. It took years, but God drew them. Some it was just like they were going this way like Paul, and then blam! He wasn't looking for him, not in that way. Everyone's story, but they all have the one point that they get to. That's called redemption. It's called when we give our life to Jesus. We figure out, I can't live. I don't want to live. I surrender. I give you my life. That's when your story begins to be part of history. And it's not the story that the world would tell you, because the world would tell you the whole way that you get life is by just gaining it all over here. And Jesus says in Matthew 16, it says, whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake, they're the ones that will find it. So your story is the same as my story, in the point that there's nothing, I can't be the Savior. I will never be that. But your story is the same as mine. If you know Jesus, we met the one who did. And he paid for you, and he paid for me, and he paid for the sins of the world. And then he begins to restore. He begins to put things back in order. You see things that were once lost, that were once broken, that were once taken, the enemy had stolen, and God begins to restore. Whole families put back together, health put back together, life put back together. Dude, I long to see, and I love to see the stories of, you'll see them, the folks that meet Jesus in their life, and they just had a drug-filled or addicted-filled life short years before, and you see their countenance, you see their picture. And you see them after they've met Jesus 6 months, 1 year later, and there's a glory that's on them. There's a shining that's on them. It's like God, he restored all that was taken over here, and he does restore all that was taken, and he will restore all that is taken. So when you're telling the story, tell it all. Tell it all. Tell the whole story, because it's, at the end of the day, it's his story. You were created. Don't back away. Don't be the piece of art that just says, well, look at me, I'm art. No, there is one who made this piece of art here. And he says, guess what? You are splendid. He says you are splendid. And he puts you on display. That's in Isaiah 61. It says, actually, after you're restored, he puts you on display and says, look at the splendor. I love it when our kids do good at something. I feel bigger. Do you not think your Father feels bigger when you tell it? And he says, look at that. Like, it's just as hard as the Father. So let's show a story. We're going to give some honor to our children's pastor. You heard some of what he did yesterday. We videoed some of his story, but I just want you to hear it, because we're going to share this out. Because, hang on just a second before you start that, Jerry. I want to tell you that I do feel like, from a season of time standpoint, something did happen, like with the passing, when Billy Graham passed, and the airways all of a sudden became filled with people talking about Jesus, their experience of how they met Jesus, or their parent met Jesus, their grandfather. I was a kid and someone took me to Jesus. I mean, it's all over the news, right? Did you feel that, the difference of that in the atmosphere compared to what normally felt like? So when it would say like that cities were being moved, and it felt like these things were going on in these cities, when you read Scripture, this is what it felt like. This is what it felt like when the good news was being proclaimed over the airways, like when it was being proclaimed. Listen, we live in a day where that stuff can go out in an instant. When your stories can go out in an instant, and people can be changed that you've never met in your entire life because you got bold enough to share the story. Because you didn't shrink back and say, I can't share, I'm ashamed. No, listen, tell that with great boldness. Give the glory to your Father. Look what he's done. Look what he's done. It's not who you are anymore. It's not who you are. So you can talk about this is where you were, and it's completely legal. What's illegal is if you attach yourself back over and say, well, this is still who I am. Listen, the blood of Jesus paid for this. This is dead. This is new, right? Don't go over there and say, this is who I still am. That's not your story. Your story was you were redeemed, and God restored you back to life. But you can say, this is who I was. This is what it felt like. This is what life looked like. And you share your story. And it's just a chance, and it's just a chance of time that we got to fill the air like with the good news of Jesus. I feel like there's a competition. And listen, it's the enemy that it says that he is the prince, the power of the airways. He's trying to rule those things that are influencing the way people think. We're not naive to it, right? We're not naive to it. That's why Scripture would tell you, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The enemy's trying to form you into a pattern over here for this life. The same one that Jesus came in the opposite of. The same one that said, oh, well, if you want to live here, die. But if you die here, you'll really live. That is opposite of this over here, but this is the truth. We got to fill the air with the good news of Jesus. I'm just telling you, there's a battle going on. Let's go ahead and share Anthony's story if you've got it pulled up. Thanks, Jerry.
My name's Anthony Ross, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town in South Arkansas, McGee, Arkansas. Not much to do there. To say we had a happy home would be an understatement. My mom was in terrible marriage, abusive marriage, drugs, alcohol, and we were right there in the middle of it. Really no way out of it. Till one morning we woke up and my mom told us to pack our bags. Let's go, we got to get out. Russellville, again, Russellville, never seen such a big city, never seen so many white people. So jump into school, going into 6th grade, growing up without a dad, never really affected me until I got in school and really began to see my issues with authority, to see the way I treated women. I was a hurt kid. I was heartbroken. Had a huge hole in my heart that no matter how many girlfriends I had, no matter how many times I mistreated my teachers, doesn't matter how many times I, bullied someone or beat someone up at school, it just never, ever worked. I'd go home and cry myself to sleep, probably 80% of the night. I had principals that worked with me. Mark Gocher he was huge. Pull me by my ear, take me to the principal's office and tell me there was something inside of me. I just had to dig for it. I had to go find it. Man, it was rough. But I jumped in with the wrong crowd. I began trying to find happiness in girls and women, and thought that running with the tough crowd and being a bully at school, and someone looks at me bad, I was going to beat them up on the playground. That's just who I was. That's what my identity was. I found my identity in that. But I was hurting. I put on this face at school that I was a big bully, and I'd go home and I'd lay in my bed and I just wanted someone to talk to. I wanted someone to teach me how to be a man. I wanted somebody to take me out and talk to me about what's going on in school. Talk to me about why I had bad grades, why I disrespected my teachers. I had a basketball coach named Don Keister, one of the greatest influential men in my life. He kept me. I got suspended off the bus for beating up somebody on the bus and wave him off at the door, and he bust in that door and dragged me out of bed in that big red dually. To say I knew about God would be an understatement. To say I knew what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus, man, never even thought about that. But I knew there was something more. I knew there was something more in my life. I went to community service, had hundreds of hours, and then I stole their alarm clock and DVD player out of there. Just a lost kid. And I look back on that person now, and it amazes me. And so I went to court, and probably the best thing that ever happened to me. One of the most emotional 4 days that I've ever been in. But I went in there, and he looked at me and said, "Mr. Anthony," he said, there's not much more I can do. He said, you've done all the community service hours. You can't even go back there. He says, I'm going to lock you up. He said, I'm going to send you to Faulkner County Penitentiary, Juvenile Detention Center. And man, I hear my mom wailing in the background. She's crying. And I have to be tough. I know that, in front of people, you can't cry, you can't show emotion. So I had this dead look on my face, and I did nothing for 48 hours. I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I've never in my life felt so lonely. I've never in my life felt so out of touch with people. And I just wanted somebody that's, as weird as it sounded, I just wanted somebody to hug me. I just wanted someone to come and tell me, like, hey, there's more out of the world. And, I would think about, my conversations with Mr. Gocher. I think about my conversations with Coach Keister. But then on the flip side, I remember that, the coach that told me that I should just drop out and sell drugs like my brother, or, that there was nothing in life, that I was one of the most annoying kids they ever had. That first night I laid down and went to bed, and man, I just had this clear voice just talk to me and just ask me, what is it that you want, Anthony? That's all it was. It just said, what is it that you want? And I just began to ask God, just bluntly, just saying, God, they say that you're out there and that you care about us, but why is it that I had to grow up without a dad? Why is it that when I really needed somebody that, there was nobody there? Why is it that I have anger problems? Why is it that, why can't you just fix it all in the snap of a finger? Here it is at 72 hours I'm in the cell, and, I've heard God speak to me 3 times, and at this time I didn't know it. And after the 3rd time, I realized it, man, that's God. That's God talking to me. But I had a joy. I knew, man, there's, God's talking to me. And I didn't know what that looks like, but I knew what it sounded like, and I knew that it was something different. I got an invite to go to a 3-on-3 basketball tournament at House of Praise, youth group. Pastor Mark Dollar's up there talking, and he says, God just spoke to me, and he told me that there was somebody in here that God told you, that you told God that you were going to change. And he doesn't want to get on to you. He doesn't want to do any of that. He just wants to tell you that he's still here waiting. And man, I'm surrounded by my friends, and there's no way I'm going to walk up. And I look down, and man, I'm walking up to the front, and I have these tears running down my face. It's a room full of teenagers, and I just hit the floor, and I just cried. And everything went by a blur. I just cried, and I've never, ever in my life felt a man wrap me in his arms. Up to that point, I never remember getting a hug from a man. But to this day, that was the most comfortable, the most at peace, the most I've ever felt love was sitting there at that altar. And so I began to open my Bible at home, and man, I went out and bought a Tripoli CD. It was some Christian rap. I had to try something new, and I had people like J.P. Dickey and Taylor Drain, man, that just would reach out to me and, let me hang out with them and do things like that. Man, from there, when God started convicting me on the things that I need to change and, understanding his word and what he wanted out of my life, holy smokes. Life just began to soar, and it was nothing that I did, but, getting good grades, man, I became super smart. I began to understand algebra and algebra 2 and geometry. Just with a breeze. It just wasn't going home and studying for a test was something I desired to do versus, feeling like it's something, because I wanted to be excellent at everything. And the people who told me that I wasn't going to make it, or the coach who told me that I should drop out and sell drugs, those people were constantly on my mind, but it was just something different that I longed to please God more than I longed to prove them people wrong. And so I graduated high school. I had a 3.8. I went from all F's to, had that B, and, I graduated, huge accomplishment for me. And then I went to college. The only thing I long to do in life is to please God and to impact someone the way that my coach impacted me. So I wanted to go out and find that young Anthony Ross in school and find out who it was that I could encourage, who I could pick up when they didn't have a ride, who I could, keep them in sports, to keep them in school, and to give them a hope. To this day, I got a dream job. I hated kids growing up. I didn't even enjoy being around them in high school. Even when I was saved, I didn't want to be around kids. I get on the bus and they just annoyed me, and I try to sit as far as away from it. I got in college, And it's just like God just smacked me in the face and said, here's what you were called to do. And David Eslick asked me to run a VBS, and I'm thinking, I don't even know how to run a VBS. I love church, man. I feel like I could teach it, and I did that. And the next thing you know, I look up, and I've been children's pastor for 4 years. I get a dream job working at Darnell Primary as the elementary PE teacher. I'm able to coach soccer and all these things. And when I decided to look back and think that nobody was there, God was standing straight in my face and saying that I was here. That you have a future and there's hope. And there's something that he did for me that my wife can't do for me, my mom can't do for me. But man, he restored everything that I lost. I dated my wife, and the first time that we slept together was our wedding night. Have a relationship with my dad again. That's not something that Anthony can do. Anthony's not very smart. Jeremiah talks about the tree that's planted by the stream. That's my life. That no matter what happens, no matter what wind comes through, no matter what storms, even in the winter, that I produce fruit. Even in my toughest times, I know that God's got my back. Man, my story is just, when you think that there's no way out. If you know God or if you don't know God, man, there's hope. There's so much hope. But when I said, God, I need you, I need your help, there was a peace and a comfort, and it just allowed for God to come in. And he didn't just come in and completely wipe everything away, he cleaned it. And to know that I graduated college and I have a job, and Anthony in 9th grade that said, I just want to do whatever pleases you, has never changed. And God's never changed, and he's never going to change.
Yes. That's the guy I want talking to my kids. Amen. Give them the truth, man. Just give them the truth. So good, because you listen to that story, and what you begin to see is you're never alone. You think in your story a lot of times that you're just alone. And you listen to someone's story and the way God used. Did you hear the names mentioned throughout, the people scattered throughout his story? They helped him become part of history. That was the joy right there. Like, how awesome is that? Coach Keister kicking down the door, going there and grabbing Anthony by the ears and pulling him out, putting him in his truck. Like, I love that story. And the reason why I love that story is because I know him, and I know he's done that over and over and over again for kids. Love that. He's making history. Changing history. Because what happens is when you're redeemed, when your story changes, you think it's just about you, and it is. And then you figure out it's not just about me. It's a weird tension, isn't it? It is absolutely 100% about you. Absolutely. And it's 100% not. It's like I'm his favorite child. I know it. I know I am. And you should know you are too. And I'm pretty sure you're his favorite too. Let me tell you, that's it. It's you. And then it's not. It's part of the story. Listen, everyone has a past, and you have a present. Don't judge your present based on just your one season, your one slice that you're in. Do not do that. Do not do that. Listen, even in the worst, I want to go down, and I want to go down with people that I love. I want to go down swinging, even if it's like Abraham, where he says, I died not even having seen the promises I was given, but I went there holding on to all of it. Holding on to all of it. Like, we all experience pain. We all experience loss. It's not the end. Don't base your life on the chapter that you're in right now. You're only in chapter 12. You're not to the end. We're all part of the end. It's just a time to be able to share your testimony, share your story. No one else has that. That's your story. Listen to how Paul described it to Timothy. I'm going to read you this, and then we'll close. This is 1 Timothy 1. He says, I can testify. He's telling to his son Timothy in the faith. He doesn't try to back up and cover over. Paul doesn't try to cover over his past, right? We're talking about the guy that was present, murdering Christians, like present when Stephen was martyred, the first one, right? Got his clothes. If anybody had some past like to work through, this guy had some. Listen to his testimony. I can testify that the word is true. That's you. If you found Jesus, you can testify that he will do this and he'll do it again. I can testify the word is true and deserves to be received by all. For Jesus Christ came into the world to bring sinners back to life, even me, the worst sinner of all. Yet I was captured by grace so that Jesus Christ could display through me the outpouring of his Spirit as a pattern to be seen for all those who would believe and have eternal life. Because of this, my praises rise to the King of the universe, who is indestructible, indivisible, full of glory, the only true God, who is worthy of the highest honor throughout all of time, throughout all of eternity. Amen. Don't you want that to be said when you can say in full confidence, listen, I'll tell you my story because it's full of grace. I'm going to tell you my story because it's full of mercy. Like, the minute I said yes at this point over here, when I said yes to Jesus, now I'm displaying the mercy of God. The very glory of this story is on my life and it's on your life. I want to make history. Like, I want to see more of that. Do it again, God. Let the testimony of Jesus be true. Do it again, God. Do it again. Do it again. Get your eyes up big enough to pray whenever you can see an entire city. Do it again, God. Get your eyes up even just out of your own story. Figure out for a second, it's not just the season. It's not just there is a bigger one going on. And wherever you are, it's not over. It's just not. I should bring you great hope. I should carry you through. Listen, we're no different than the children of Israel. I can complain about it when I read them like, geez, you guys really, how did you just forget? You just walked through an ocean on dry ground. Like, how does that mental imagery leave you? And then I hear God call me to do something, and 3 days later, I'm like, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? And I'm like, well, I should have never said anything about those guys. We all do it because we're trying to just look at the chapter. This is the book. Has a beginning, has a middle, has an end. Has an end, has a glorious hope. Don't judge your life by the chapter you're in. Just don't do that. It wouldn't be wise for us. I told Wayne this morning, my new slogan, and I'm saying it because I'm not living it yet, so I'm just going to say it, so maybe I'll get there. Fast, we don't like fast anymore. Slow is the new fast, and less is more. Got me? Less is more, slow is the new fast. Nothing in the kingdom happened overnight. Like, it's all in seed form and all grows. Like, it's through faith and patience that your life, that you work this life out. If you're in a chapter, don't park it and say, this is my life. No, this is just a chapter of it. Through faith and patience, God's working this thing out, and he's going to work it together for good. Just keep loving him. Keep loving him. Keep loving him. That's my story. That's your story. That's the history we're going to make with God, is tell others this is our story. This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. Right? Why don't you just stand? Listen, our altar teams are going to come up here. Listen, altar teams sound like the people that want prayer. I'm not going up there because everyone's going to think I'm screwed up. So we're going to call them God's facilitators for the next you. I don't know, it sounded like a good book to me in my head right then. Like, it's like the ultimate self-help. Listen, there is not a problem. Problem is when we carry this stuff out of here and we don't go get it out, we don't give God an opportunity to touch it. Right? Who's ever needed prayer from someone else? All right, good. We got that out of the way. So, if you need, you're in your story, and you're just like, hey, I'm like the guy that the Good Samaritan found in the ditch. I've been beat down right now. I need somebody to pull me up out of this ditch. Just go get prayer. Because this is Resurrection Sunday. If you can't find some resurrection life today, listen, we're in trouble. This is what these people are armed to do, is just to pray for you, to love you. If you've never given your life to Jesus Christ, the same grace that touched Paul's life, the same grace that has the power to pull you out of what you think you could never be pulled out of is available. It's available. It's available. It's within reach. Jesus Christ is only on the other side of the door. Ask, and it'll be given. Just He's there. He's not far. In fact, it's just a prayer. It's just your whisper of, God, I'm here. Like, that's how close the Father is. So if that's you and you need to give your life to Jesus Christ, listen, let your story get changed. You just don't know. You've limited the story because you've thought only by what you could do. But we serve a God that does the impossible. He puts a guy back together with his father who hated his father. He gives him a wife. Did you hear that? Didn't sleep together until they were married. How beautiful is that? God restoring that. Restoring that. Restoring his life. Don't you love that?